Hey, welcome to day 3 of my little mini refuel message on replacing the destructive disease of discouragement with hope and a future. And frankly, let's admit it, man, who doesn't need that? Okay. And we have been talking about this, and let me tell you why this is such a big deal. And this is sort of personal testimony from me. If you're at our Thrive conference, you heard this, or I said it to 50 business people in a backyard recently. When COVID sort of exploded in March, I was in a backyard in Southern California, and Coachella got canceled, and the tennis tournament got canceled down in La Quinta, and I got a phone call, and they were like, "We have to pull the plug on the Thrive conference." And I can't tell you how discouraged I was. I love that conference. Thousands of pastors from all and business people come to it from all over the nation, all over the world, actually. And I love these people. I love building into them. I love encouraging leaders. I love doing this with you. And I usually bounce back quick. I got discouraged and I stayed discouraged. And then my main last lesson from God in the last 6 months was this. I'm in a backyard and I'm reading my Bible after we've had to make this decision, and I'm just down and depressed. And the Spirit of God said to me, "Ray, if you will let go of discouragement, if you will develop the discipline of going, I am not going to hold on to discouragement. I'm going to let it go and replace it with dreaming. The world just might be a better place." And it was this voice. It wasn't the audible voice of God. It was this thoughts from God flood me as I was just reading my Bible. If you will let go of discouragement and replace it with dreaming, the world just might be a better place. I don't know what's going on in your life, okay? But I actually believe this, the start to anybody having anything better in your marriage, your business, whatever, the start is to let go of, say with me, discouragement, which will take you down, and walk out of that prison and replace it with dreaming. The world can be a better place. So while I'm reading my Bible in the backyard, I just took out a sheet of paper and I just wrote down at the top of the sheet of paper, I just said, what would a massive win look like? Kind of like Nehemiah. Walks in the city of Nehemiah and they're literally going, the wall's down, the gates are burned with fire, we're getting attacked by these mindless critics, all this kind of stuff. And Nehemiah walks in, and here he just asked one question. What would a massive win look like? And back then, a massive win, here it is. Let's build a wall around this whole city that's been knocked down and people said couldn't happen for 92 years. They get that done, by the way, in 52 days. Because when anybody lets go of discouragement and replaces it with dreaming, now, here's the question is, what steps do you have to take to replace discouragement with dreaming? Because that's exactly what happened with our conference. We let go of the discouragement of not having 6,000 people on site, and we just started dreaming. And here was my dream. What would be a God-sized win from God? We said, could we launch the largest ever, completely free, online, global, anybody can come, it doesn't have to pay, leadership conference, and could we send it worldwide, and could we get it all done in 9 weeks? Impossible. Nehemiah got a wall built in 52 days. Let's take a shot at this thing. I have no way to describe how shocked I was. The last numbers were this. There were 484,000 distinct devices tuned into this, some of which had multiple people watching it, well over 500,000 people. There were people there from 113 countries, including countries the gospel could not go to. We were flooded by people saying, thank you, I needed this so bad. Life is hard in our country and in our church worldwide. And it has continued, the ripple effect that has continued to this day. There is incredible power unleashed if you let go of discouragement and replace it with dreaming. The question is this, how do you do that? And we've been saying this for the last 2 days. Here it is. Number 1 is you start by refreshing your spirit. Nehemiah, the step 1 for Nehemiah was he said, I get with God and I refresh my spirit. Then step 2 is this. He relied on God. He said, the God of heaven will give us success. We as servants will arrive. And when you refresh your spirit and you rely on God, then you're ready for the third thing. Because he does those 2 things and then they start to build. And here it is. Number 3 is this, refuse to give up. You refuse to give up. Nehemiah, halfway through, gets re-discouraged and quits because nothing's ever easy. Building anything for God's never easy. And by the way, I'm going to give these the 4 F's. If you can, somewhere you can write them down, write them down. Here it is. Fatigue, failure, frustration, and fear. Fatigue. It says the strength of the laborers is given out. Anybody feel fatigued these days? You got kids at home, and second is this frustration. He said, there is so much rubble. You're going, it's so frustrating. We can't even move. Okay. Third is this failure. They literally halfway through go, we can't rebuild the wall. And fear. Their enemies said, before we know it, we will kill them and put an end to it. The critics and the enemies are going, we're going to stop these guys from doing what God's called them to do. And let me ask you a question. When there's fatigue, failure, frustration, and fear, what did Nehemiah say to do? What did God tell him to tell the people? What do you do when you are tempted to give up? You know what his answer is this? Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 21. Here it is. We continued to work. We continued to work. I love this. Marriage shaky? Get back and work on it. Anything. In other words, we continued to work. In other words, they refused to give up. And because they refused to quit. And here's what I want to say. During this crazy season, don't quit on God. Don't quit on your church. Don't quit on hope. Don't quit on your marriage. Don't quit on your kids. Don't quit on your future. Don't quit on trying to get back in better shape. Don't quit spending time with God. Quitting is a destructive force. And here's the problem with quitting. Nothing ever gets built if you quit. Okay? Just don't quit. Never make any decisions when you're down. If I can pastor you all, this is a huge deal. These steps in Nehemiah, write them down somewhere, memorize them, put them on your word, refresh your spirit, rely on God, refuse to quit and give up. And the last one is this. Refocus on the future. I love this. Nehemiah says, the God of heaven will, that's future tense, give us success. That's future tense. And then he says, we, his servants, will arise and build. All this stuff. Nehemiah focuses them only on the future. Maybe the best way to describe this is this. There is only one way to have a future, and that is to look forward, because nobody goes forward well when they are looking back. And I talked about this in church a couple years ago. We could try an experiment today. Please don't do this. But it would be really interesting to go, all of you watching this, here's the experiment. Get some duct tape. Get some newspapers. Tape the windshields of your cars. And then spend an entire day driving, whatever state you're in, whatever country you're in, whatever side of the road you drive on in Europe. Just take your car and drive all day long, only looking in the rearview mirror. All of you are going, that's insane. Nobody will do it. There's one in every crowd. Don't do it. All of you are looking at me going, Ray, that's insane. None of us are dumb enough to follow those instructions. None of us are stupid enough to drive that way. You are exactly right. None of us are dumb enough to drive that way. All of us just might be dumb enough to live that way. You never go forward well when you are looking back. I hope these last 3 days have been valuable, because I actually believe this with all my heart. If you will take the same steps that Nehemiah took in a discouraged, despair place where COVID existed for 92 years, one guy shows up, refreshes his spirit, relies on God, refuses to quit, and refocuses on the future, and every single thing changes. That can be the same for you. God has better days ahead. God is still working when it doesn't look like God is working. And when the whole country's insane and you hear anything troubling or anything that is unsettling or anything that is massively discouraging, instead of falling apart, get this out and become a modern day Nehemiah. And here's what you say. I'm going to refresh my spirit. I'm going to get close to, I'm taking this stuff to God. I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to rely on God. What you rely on will determine how solid you are. Third is this. I'm going to refuse to quit and give up, which would be a brand new thing for most people in America. And the last one is this. I'm going to refocus on the future, because the only people that have a future are people whose dreams are greater than their memories. God bless you. I hope this has been helpful. as a prescription for God. Discouragement now is more of an epidemic than COVID. It is more deadly and dangerous than COVID. This is God's antidote to walk out of there. Stay close to God. Stay healthy, people. I love you. I believe God's got better days ahead for you no matter what you're going through. And the way to get there is to walk the path Nehemiah walked. And who knows, 2,000 years from now, people will be talking about you and what you built. God bless. Thanks for tuning in.